Welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I come from the acting background.
And I'm Josh Knapp. I'm a broadcast engineer.
Here we go.
All right. Today we're going to finish up Old New Boring Blue number 3. But before that...
Part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
Right.
That's right. But before that, we were just going to talk about a couple of things that have happened over the last week, I guess. At least for me, I mean, I'm starting to watch movies more now because I've forced myself to do this. I don't want to say that.
You set a goal.
But I did set a goal.
Yeah.
I'm behind, but I am still working through it. I did see Elephant Man, though.
Okay, before you say that, remind everybody what your goal is.
Okay. My goal at the beginning of October was to watch 31 movies in 31 days.
Right.
It wasn't to watch a movie every day because it's just not
possible.
tenable. I can't do that.
And 10 of them came from a list of suggestions that
Yes, you gave me, which about 6 of them are really hard to find.
Yeah, why is that? I saw that they're all saved.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like this
Netflix.
weird, like they didn't make DVDs of them because they were old enough to where they didn't make, like they weren't necessarily, people weren't necessarily maybe clamoring for those movies on DVD because I'm sure they're readily available on VHS. And that may be the way that I have to go about it. So I'm going to see...
Well, I thought about YouTube. Can't you like $1.99?
I think you might be able to rent some stuff on
Yeah.
YouTube or Google Play or whatever.
Yeah.
But and then some on Amazon too. But a lot of those aren't on Amazon where you can like rent it for $3 or something.
Well, curious though, when I went on to see Netflix, when you had said you were having a little bit of a difficult time, and it's 3 of the ones that I definitely want you to see: Dominic and Eugene, Accidental Tourist, and The Year of Living Dangerously. Why does it say on Netflix saved then if it's not on DVD?
I think it's because they don't want to say nothing. They don't want to give you any option. Because there have been movies that I've put in my saved queue that were not available at the time, but then became available. Like right now, I mean, what's a movie that just came out? Gone Girl.
Right.
My guess is that you could go on to Netflix and look up Gone Girl, and instead of them having nothing, they would have a description, and they would have a little button that says save.
So if and when they do put it on a DVD, then you would get it.
You can get it.
Okay.
Exactly. It goes from the save queue into your DVD queue, and then it gets sent to you whenever you tell it to. But yeah, so I'm still working on that, but I have watched I watched obviously the movies that we were watching for this show, but then I also watched a few other movies, Nebraska and Elephant Man. And Nebraska was fine. I mean, I don't really have too much to say about that, but Elephant Man was
amazing.
It was kind of a weird 1-2 punch for me.
David Lynch.
David Lynch,
which is strange right there because it's
not a mainstream movie.
Yeah,
and it's a British movie, a very British
based on the play.
Movie. It is based on a play.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, Bradley Cooper is getting ready to redo the role again.
Really?
He did it on stage, and if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to look it up. Speaking of Bowie, earlier before the episode, you and I were talking about Bowie. I believe Bowie did it on stage too.
Really?
And all of there's no prosthetics, there's no anything. It's all done with the way that the actor holds his body.
Okay.
And there are moments in the play where the actor comes out of that to show you what it would be like if he wasn't that. He actually, a couple times, the one time that I did see it, the actor started out, just walked out on stage, and then went into the contortion of his body and stayed like that the whole entire time. Okay. Fascinating. But Bradley Cooper, I believe, is getting ready to redo it on Broadway, if I'm not mistaken. Huh. That'd be something to see.
Yeah.
He's a big Broadway person. He's a big actor on stage, Bradley Cooper.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's an actor studio guy, and he has a big theater background.
Stanislavski, or what is that? Starts with a T. I can't remember what it is.
T.
No, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm not sure which. Interesting. I should have come up with something.
Well, I don't know. I watched the thing about Al Pacino, and he talked, he sat in there and talked about the actor studio.
Right. Most of it's based on that Meisner technique.
Okay.
Right. Remember where I said you repeat each other's lines?
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's
right. We talked about that during the Brando, during the on the waterfront.
And then I pointed it out in Eyes Wide Shut. The next time you see it, most of the dialogue is, "How are you today? how are you today? And it goes back and forth and they repeat the same thing. Wait till you see it again. You're going to be like, wow, I never noticed that before. But people really do speak like that, which is interesting. So anyway, Elephant Man, John Hurt, right?
Yeah, and John Hurt is...
Oscar nomination, by the way, for this movie. Deserved.
He is amazing.
Yes, he is.
And, there's a couple of things. You've got John Hurt. You've got... the prosthetics, I don't think took away from anything because it was early 80s, late 70s type of a thing. And so it's not going to be photorealistic prosthetics, I don't think.
Right.
Because, I was kind of feeling like, first of all, I loved the first, 30 minutes, 40 minutes when they do a lot of diversion. You don't see what he looks like. There's a lot of silhouette on the sheet.
Yeah.
And I love that because especially when he comes into, Anthony Hopkins brings him into, an auditorium and shows him off to these doctors, and you hear audible gasps from people, and all you see is the sheet. So you're just in your brain, you're just saying, what is going on with this guy and how deformed is he and how, quotes, grotesque is this guy to where these medical doctors are reacting in this way. And then you finally do see him and it didn't take me out of it, which it was kind of a tall order because of, I was expecting, 80s makeup. I was expecting Goonies. I was expecting, that kind of a, type of a thing. So that was amazing. And John Hurt's performance was amazing.
Stunning.
The sound design of it, which not many people talk about that in movies, but whenever I don't know if they re-recorded his voice. It sounded like they didn't, just because of a lot of times you can tell when they resync somebody's voice, but the things like when he would breathe in or when he was talking and he would breathe in, you'd get this kind of like when you breathe in, you kind of have a lot of saliva. It's that kind of like crackly.
Right. But do you get why they were doing that?
It totally makes sense. And
because at the end, what he chooses to do.
No. That makes sense.
Right.
That makes sense. I understand his condition.
Right.
And he has like kind of like the same condition that like pugs have, where they just don't have a very good airway, bronchitis and all that stuff. But, it's, my wife will kill me. It's brachycephalic dogs. That's what those types of
well, if you hadn't mentioned it, you could tell your wife that that's one of those words. Say it again.
Brachycephalic.
Yeah, I would have to rehearse that for about 3 days. Not even going to try it.
But anyway, that situation, they're bringing that kind of to the forefront, and they're using sound to do that. You've obviously got the visual, but then they're also using that sound, and that's kind of it definitely sets him apart from everybody else in the movie, and that movie actually pairs well with a movie we're going to talk about later on today, Diving Bell and the Butterfly, I think.
Yes.
But anyway, he was, as a performance, part of me was like at the very beginning of the movie when the first 30 minutes or whatever, when it's basically just him in silhouette and he's basically an imbecile.
Right.
I mean, that's what everybody's saying. He's an imbecile. And I didn't know anything about this movie or anything about the real story or whatever. Is it a real story?
Yes.
Not a real story? Okay. So didn't know anything about it. And so I, came at it from that point, and I was like, why is John Hurt in this title role? Why is he playing the Elephant Man? Because there's no dialogue, and he doesn't have any dialogue, and I didn't really see it. And then once we get into the meat of the movie, you're just like, if this was in any other actor's hands, it would be really touchy, I think.
Well, the thing I find interesting is you mentioned Brando from when we were talking about On the Waterfront, and in that movie there is the often imitated, I could have been a contender, I could have been somebody, I just did it right there. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have this thing in our psyche where we almost have to imitate things and kind of bring it to the majority and start kind of making fun of it a little bit, because it is such a moment. And when you see that moment in On the Waterfront, you're like, wow, I don't care how many times I could have made fun of it, not make fun of it, but make fun with it, get out of my way, give me something in the refrigerator, could have been a contender, something, to make it comes up in the lexicon of the language. And the same thing with John Hurt's line about, I'm not an animal, I'm a human being. You hear people say that all the time. And I don't think people mean ill will, like they're not making fun of it, but they always say, like somebody's mistreating you for some reason, you're like, I'm not an animal, I'm a human being. And you make fun of it, fun with it. But then when you see that moment in that film, It's
Powerful.
soul stirring. It's touching.
Well, and it's the first time that, I mean, that whole, I mean, we could talk forever
Yeah,
about
exactly.
it. But anyway, I should have seen this movie before now.
Well, now you have.
And now
all
I have.
things in due time.
That's right. All right. Did you say you wanted to talk about something?
Well, actually, I just recently watched. Well, I told you before the episode that I'm into Homeland season 3. So once I get onto those, I did Sons of Anarchy season 6, and TV shows because I didn't have cable for a while, so I've been catching up on that kind of stuff. Next is the Jessica Lange show, American Horror Story, the second or third season. Anyway, so I went to Redbox and I was like, let me look for something. There's a movie with Clive Owens and Juliette Binoche, who I love. I love Juliette Binoche. And it's called Beautiful. And she is aging so gracefully. And she, I believe, is better looking now, meaning she looks so herself. It's not necessarily an aesthetic of beauty per se, but she just looks so who she is. She's pleasant to look at, not because of physically, but just because she has this.
Well, I think it's a quality that you can, that I think my wife shares.
I agree with you.
You don't have to wear makeup and you look beautiful.
I agree with you 100%. As a matter of fact, I wish I had made that comparison because I did notice that the last time that we had dinner. But anyway, it's called Words and Pictures. And forgive me, I might have gotten the title wrong. It might be Pictures and Words. Okay. He's a writer at a school, prep school, who used to have a writing career and now is a teacher and sort of is down and out, alcoholic. She's a painter. Word and Pictures is the name of the movie, I believe. And she has rheumatoid arthritis, and she can't paint the same. So she's tried a whole bunch of different paintbrushes with thicker tape around them so she can hold them. She eventually discovers how to work around her body is shutting down physically. She becomes the new art honors teacher at this school. And of course, she is not a nice person. She is disgruntled to disgruntled to disgruntled. And of course, they meet, they butt heads. And the whole theory of the movie is, of course, it's two hurt animals that need two birds that wings have been clipped, and they come together on common terms. And he's saying that words are more important than pictures, and she says that art's more important than words. And she of course says a picture's worth 1,000 words, that kind of thing. And he goes, without words you can't say that, you
can't quantify a picture's worth.
And so it sort of it regenerates their energy towards their crafts. And he takes a path, and they eventually get together. And it's really not the kind of movie where if you tell people what's happening, it's really going to ruin anything. You can kind of see the way it's going. And the reason why I mention it is because it is by far the best performance by Clive Owens I've ever seen. As a matter of fact, it's one of those movies that if we did this like professionally on TV and people were watching us in thousands, I would promote that for an Oscar nomination, because it's an alcoholic. He's, it's the cliche, it's all those things. And you can't even talk about her because she is pitch perfect almost all the time. He, though, has this moment where I'm like, I've never seen that from him before. I've seen him do different things, Children of Men, and that might Closer. He was nominated for the Oscar, won the Golden Globe. They thought that he was going to win the Oscar. Then Morgan Freeman from $1 Million Baby. Sometimes that popularity thing, not taking anything away from Morgan Freeman. I loved $1 Million Baby. If you're going to give Morgan Freeman an Oscar, give it to him for that one. I'm fine with that. But there's just this moment in there that he is just on point, and I was like, oh, this is great. It's layered in depth and dimension that I have not seen from him before. And it's a father-son thing, 90%. And it's one of those movies that it's not offensive, and meaning it's not going to like make you mad because it's not funny or it doesn't make you cry enough. It's not going to, you're not expecting anything from it. It's just a small, what they call a sleeper film. This fits into that category. So if you like great acting, and it's just you, and I thought of you and Steph, it's perfect movie for you guys to watch together. Not exactly the nicest of the two characters in this world, but well worth the time invested. So I was happy to see it. It was a pleasant surprise.
Cool. Great. All right. Well, let's get into the second part of our Old, New, Boring, Blue. We've already done the new, which was Gone Girl last week. So we'll start today with Old. And we watched The Night of the Hunter. It's a 1955 movie Charles Lawton directed this, who was a big theater guy. Do you know much about him?
You know, just by people talking and reputation, I did look up a few things, but sometimes when I'm doing research for the shows, it sort of hampers me from what I felt about the movie.
Yeah.
So I go, okay, that's a fact. Do I really need to talk about that? Here's what I felt. So maybe because I come from that side of this, I really don't. So the answer to you is no, I don't really know a whole lot about him.
And speaking of facts, the only fact that I really know that may be pertinent to this is that this is the only movie that he directed.
Oh, interesting.
And there's been some sort of just in reading about it, there's been some sort of a discrepancy on like whether he directed the whole movie. There may have been certain scenes where Robert Mitchum stepped in and kind of directed some parts.
I would not be surprised by that. Well, I will say this. If this gentleman does have a theater background, you can tell. There are shots in there that look like, well, obviously they used a lot of studios and stuff to shoot a lot of it. And I'm glad we're starting with this because it's the positive for me first.
Yeah.
There's, I know what I wanted to talk to you about. What happened to wide angle shots where the whole picture is the whole scene and the people are just like a couple inches big? That doesn't happen nowadays.
That's German expressionism. That's him.
I love that.
And he was specific about that. From what I've read, he was specifically kind of hearkening back to 1920s filmmaking and some type of using miniatures. And in fact, in that scene where the preacher is riding on the horse.
Yes.
So there's a scene, preacher's riding on a horse, and you basically see him way in the distance. It was actually a little person on a pony. That's how they were able to shoot it that way.
Why don't people do that nowadays? How come they don't pull the camera back? Have you ever noticed in concert films they don't do that?
Social Network, he did it.
Does he?
Yeah, he does. There's multiple scenes. There's especially the regatta scene where they're doing the boat racing.
Yeah, but that seems like to call for it. But, an actual one-on-one acting scene where the camera pulls back and the focus is not, I guess because movies are about facial expressions and up close shots, but you don't see that often. So that regatta race makes sense. But I'm talking about, why don't they just pull the camera back so you can see everything?
More like theater, like you said.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Oops. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Go figure.
Exactly.
Go figure. That's what I'm attracted to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right though. I mean, I think there may be certain scenes where, I think you could use that effect very well with building tension. If you see a large scene, a large area where you've got two separate acting, two separate subjects, and they're separated from something, and you see something going on both sides, and neither one knows about each other. Things like that. I can't come up with. Hurt Locker had some scenes that were really backed off like that, but
And nowadays they just all of a sudden they cut to a close up, or they cut to her leg or his arm or something. And you're like, no, hold. Let me see it. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated that about this film. Mm-hmm. And it's black and white, so it has this really kind of smoky, when he first arrives to the house and the lamp outside, the flame outside. Did you notice that flame got bigger when he walked past it and then got smaller when he walked away? On purpose, you think?
Okay, yeah. That whole scene, I guess we should probably back up and just give a quick, this is a movie that's been around for a long time, but I'll give the IMDb, the little quick 2-sentence, description. A religious fanatic marries a gullible widow whose young children are reluctant to tell him where their real daddy hid $10,000 he'd stolen in a robbery. So ultimately, it's a guy who is a serial killer. He's also a psychopath.
Ex-con, sociopath.
Sociopath and psychopath.
Yeah, narcissistic, histrionic, you name one. It all fits him.
Yeah.
It all fits him.
I think Robert Mitchum did a good job playing it convincingly, but it looks like you didn't. So.
Well, no, I didn't want to immediately go from the positives to the negatives because I did love the way the film looked. But I was a bit perplexed and confused about the narrative and about the flow of the storyline.
Okay, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how it looks, because I do agree with you. That particular scene, there was one shot in that scene. It's basically two kids in their bedroom, and their room is being lit by a gas lamp outside, and through a window, and you can see the kid, the older kid, gets up and is looking kind of like at the reflection of, or at the silhouette of Robert Mitchum's character on his wall. And then it cuts to a shot. First of all, it breaks that, what we've talked about in the past, the 180 degree rule, where if you've got a scene where you've got two characters in it, or two subjects in it, you don't go more than 180 degrees from where the camera was when you're establishing shot. Well, so what it does is it actually puts the camera on the other side of that wall. And I don't know if you picked this up or if it was visceral enough to see it, but I definitely noticed it. But the camera is on the other side of that wall, and they're basically making a fake wall with like a scrim or some sort of a sheet or of some kind.
Oh, that you could see.
The camera can see through.
Yes, I did notice that.
So you're able to see the kid, you're able to see the main character, or not the main character, you're able to see the kid and then the silhouette of Robert Mitchum at the same time in the same frame, superimposed on each other.
Right.
Which is obviously an impossible shot. I mean, it's not something that you couldn't actually put a camera there and do that. But obviously, Charles Laughton thought that would be an interesting shot, number one, and thought that it would be a useful shot, and he did it. And so that to me was just kind of like, I mean, that was kind of like a Citizen Kane type thing where it's like he probably said, like, I want to do this shot, and they're like, well, you can't do that shot. There's a wall there. He's like, well, figure it out. We'll make it happen. Same thing with Orson Welles and Citizen Kane. I want to have a really low angle shot. Well, the camera's too big. You can't put it down there. Yeah, fine. Let's cut a hole in the floor.
That's great.
So
that's so great.
So it's just problem solving.
Yeah,
so
and I love scrims,
that,
by the way. I think scrims are the most interesting thing on a theater stage ever. You can do so many things with the scrim. I'm fascinated by that technology. Yeah. Whoever came up with that is brilliant. I don't know. These kind of things make me excited. It's kind of stupid, but I like it. Yeah, right.
That's cool. But so, those types of things. I did also want to, I mean, you brought up two of the scenes that I thought were masterful.
Yeah, and in those
from
little,
a filmmaking standpoint.
And in those scenes, you could have just those shots, and you could read the whole storyline just in those scenes. That's what I enjoy about them the most, is that you can understand everything about what's going on in the characters and what probably is going to happen in the future by just those shots. That I love. It's like we were talking about how a director of stage and movies, they will paint a picture with people. You go there, you come downstage, you go upstage. Mm-hmm. And at one point in time, everybody will be at a still. And if you took a picture, it would look posed, but it was really happening in
live.
Yeah, which is incredible. And directors think that way. I actually got a chance when I went to college to pick a lot of directors' minds. And they were like, okay, well, if he comes downstage this way and she goes upstage, this means that she's leaving him, or he's, it's all very intricately thought out.
And it's what the audience feels.
Yes.
And the director understands that and knows how to manipulate that.
Right. Yeah. That's why I get so excited about things like Scrim, because I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes me feel so many different things. Yeah.
Well, and it's the same thing with like this 180 degree rule type stuff, where filmmakers know what we as film goers expect, and they know how to either play towards that or exploit that by going against that, you know, and making you feel, you're like, something about this doesn't make me feel right or makes me feel uneasy, and you can't even register it, but the filmmaker knows that and they're using that to their advantage.
Right.
So and I mean, we've got, as far as the cast goes, we got Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters plays the mother of the two kids and the woman that Mitchum saddles up next to and gets in her good graces. And then Lillian Gish is an old silent film actress who plays the world's best person.
The old woman in the shoe is who she reminded me of, where she just takes kids in.
She's just like the best person ever, I guess.
Yeah, she is really. She's a bit mean in the beginning. She's a bit like spoil the rod or spare the child. Oh, spare the rod, spoil the child.
But she's basically just reading from, at the very beginning, the first scene, she's basically just reading from the Bible saying, beware of false prophets. And then boom, Robert Mitchum. So So you were saying you had an issue with the plot itself or just the subject matter? Or?
Well, all of the above. Maybe it's not because what I was I don't know. You have these expectations, whether it's a subconscious thing. Maybe I thought it was supposed to be something else because I've heard about this film, and this is the only thing that I read that I thought was interesting. Well, it's basically the only thing I read really is that it got really criticized when it first came out, and now it's considered a classic, and it's one of those films that Scorsese took time to make sure that they put him in his vault. Doesn't he have like a place where he stores?
Sure
he does. And then it's like the something film of Congress, right? Isn't there a
Library of Congress? They
yes.
basically Pulp Fiction just got added to it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and
they take movies that they consider are important to America's history, and they put them in there.
And apparently, people as important as Scorsese, which we know he is to us. Let's mention his name every show. That'll be okay. But they really fought for this film to be restored, and I thought that I'm glad that I saw it, but there's something weird how it all of a sudden switches. I think Shelley Winters, because of the plot line, is underused. I think she's interesting, and there's something that I think that might becoming a terminology we might be using before Brando and after Brando. Because this is 1 year after On the Waterfront, so maybe that realistic Stanislavski, that whole being complete method, wasn't really taken in at that point by the time they made this movie, because the performances, especially Mitchum's performance, is just so over the top in moments. That screaming scene he has, it pulled me right out, and I didn't want to laugh, but I couldn't. If I was a little kid, I would be like, this is the funniest movie ever. And it's a terrible scene. I mean, but I'm talking about that scream scene. I didn't quite understand why they took that so far, but didn't pull it back. I didn't, and I thought the kids were lacking something too. But go ahead.
Well, the kids, I felt like the kids did as much as they could. The girl was
stand here, say this, go.
But she said it in a very actory way, which really scares me. Like, it makes me think that her parents took her into this room and drilled her no, don't say it like this, say it like this.
That's what I'm saying.
And
stand here, say this, go.
But even it's not even just saying the words. It's you have to say it like this.
Absolutely.
Exactly like
I felt the same way.
There's no input from her as a person. It's just parrot, And,
but have you ever tried to get somebody who only really watches modern day movies, try to get them to watch Citizen Kane or Casablanca? And I brought this up with On the Waterfront. I said, do you get why this film has been revered? And you were like, yes. You and I are just a tad bit different on that level because we're interested in film. So if I had said that about Casablanca or Maltese Falcon or On the Waterfront or Citizen Kane, it wouldn't matter what that person thought. Maybe they couldn't get into it. This is one of those films that if you recommended, it's so dated in a way, stylistically, it's hard to go into the world and completely. I have a strong suspension of disbelief. Always have, always will. Always have. But this one, I kept getting pulled out because I thought, well, that's exaggerated. Like Icy, the lady who runs the
sweet shop.
Yeah, the sweet shop. Everything's so obvious. She's an icy old lady. Her name is Icy. They run a soda shop. It's called Suds or whatever it's called.
Yes.
Yeah. Something like that. It's just everything was so. But Shelley Winters, who has 2 Oscars, really quick short story. Apparently, she was asked to audition later on in life, much later on in life, and so she walked into the producer's office. And I know this is a factual story. I might be getting it a little exaggerated wrong, but it's a great story. And she plopped her first Oscar on the desk, and she plopped her second Oscar on the desk, and she said, "Do I have the role?" I love that. I mean, it's even that story's not true. I love that because what else do I have to do to prove to you that I'm okay? I'm a good actress, and I think she was right there. There was a few times where you could tell she was just going over that limit, but she was based in some kind of reality. So when what happens to her happens, I was like, okay, I can't. And then the plot twists, and then it becomes just about the kids. And I have to say this:
it becomes a chase movie.
Exactly. Why is it called The Night of the Hunter?
It was. I've read about this. It was based on a book from a couple of years before.
Okay,
that was called Night of the Hunter, and maybe there was a whole nother subplot in that book that. we didn't get in the
Yeah,
movie.
but can you understand why I'm questioning that? Because it's like, what was it about that film that was he hunting them? That's why,
yes,
and it was
I
at
mean-
night. But that's really kind of
Oh no, I don't know about the night thing, but
Yeah.
but yes, he was hunting. So he felt, and we haven't even talked about the religious angle of this movie, but he felt that he was getting some sort of an instruction from God to do the things that he's doing, and you can tell that it's not he's using religion to manipulate people.
absolutely.
I mean, in a very specific way and in a very effective way. But he also it's different than the guy who goes out there and whatever does revivals and then is like, these people are idiots and counts as money or whatever.
Yeah.
It's different. He had something in him that made him think that God was telling him to do these things.
But do you really believe he thought God was telling him, or do you think that he was using that as a manipulation tool to get what he wants throughout the film?
Well, so there's two different ways to think about that. Number one, he vocalized at the very beginning of the movie. He's driving down the road. He's vocalizing, well, God, where do you want me to go now? What do you want me to do? That type of a thing. And either he's doing that specifically for expositionary reasons. He's like, this is the movie, and now I'm telling you what's happening. Or if somebody's going to verbalize that, I mean, if you don't really believe it, I just don't really see the point in somebody verbalizing it.
The fact that it's not a definite in your mind one way or another is an issue for me.
Well, but I mean, it was.
You
when I
believe
watched the
that
movie-
God was speaking to him?
No, I believe that he thought.
Okay.
No, there's a totally different thing there. A relationship between God and
Well, that's
a
what I
person
meant.
is two things. It's what the person thinks it is, and then it's a real thing. I think. I mean, this person can maybe not understand. Like, I just really don't think that he was all there mentally.
Absolutely.
And so that's how it manifested itself. Was,
Interesting.
He glommed onto, I've got these desires, so maybe it's a God thing. Maybe God is telling me this thing, and he's doing that and using his manipulation, using his personality to manipulate people. So
Yeah, and it's one of those things where maybe if I did hear Scorsese talking about it, I could come to an understanding of why this film has been revered. But on first watch, I have to say I didn't get that. I didn't see why this has been talked about. And it has been talked about. I've heard about it for years now. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you picked it. I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Why have I not?
Neither one of us had seen it.
No.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. But I had no problem with Citizen Kane, and I'm not comparing anything. They're not the new Beatles. I hate when people say this band's the new Beatles. It's not. This band. The Beatles are the Beatles. But I'm not comparing it to Citizen Kane. What I'm trying to articulate here is that when I saw Citizen Kane, I was completely delved into the story, and I got why this film has been so celebrated for so long. I had the emotional responses that you're supposed to have, that I had, and I was, this is really great. This one, I think I need to hear what other people thought about it to maybe, I don't want to disrespect it because I think it's a little bit of me maybe not getting it. At the same time, I don't think that it's there for this one, for me. So anyway, what else did you want to talk about before we move on?
I was just going down my list, and I do have melodramatic acting.
That scream is bizarre.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Well, and it's interesting. This is my note. Melodramatic acting, but Winters was haunting. So, I mean,
You said it in 2 lines that I just took 10 minutes to say. I love it.
So, yeah.
But I would say if you're interested in film, you should check it out because people are talking about it. And I wish people would tweet us why they like this film and what.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get. We talk about everything in its due time. I've often talked about I'll go back and listen to an album that didn't really hit me at the time, and maybe I'll get it later on in life. I'll purposely do that for a few things. This one, maybe in a couple years, something will happen, and I'll get something. But for this time.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I'll say is that I just got the disc from Netflix, and it was a Blu-ray. I got the Blu-ray, and it is a beautiful transfer. Like it looked, I mean, that and On the Waterfront. I mean, they're doing some amazing work on like cleaning up these movies. They basically take the film and they scan it, and we talked about that I think last week, a couple weeks ago. Yeah. They take the film, scan it in, they clean, like if there's like hair or a scratch, they digitally clean that. Love that. And so I was watching. What I was watching was what somebody who was watching the first run of a print would be watching in 1955, which is crazy. And it did look beautiful.
Do you know that in LA there's a theater that shows movie theater that shows nothing but black and white films?
Really?
Yeah, so wouldn't it be great to just on a Saturday night, instead of seeing Gone Girl, which, of course we wanted to, you could say, I'm going to go see Casablanca the way it was supposed to be seen. Definitely. It's definitely a different experience. And this might be one of those films you need to experience in the big scope of things.
And that's one reason why I've never seen Lawrence of Arabia.
Because you want to see it.
I'm holding out. Lawrence of Arabia was shot in 70 millimeter. Yes. And I'm holding out for somewhere, somehow, maybe I can see it for the first time in 70 millimeter at a theater.
Well, you just put it out there. It's going to happen.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So we're moving on to
the boring movie, which I picked again, and it's a movie by Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Marc Caro called Delicatessen, 1991. This was their first movie, their first full feature-length movie, and it's a collaboration between these two French filmmakers. So,
had they made films before?
They'd made other
separately
short films.
Okay.
And I think Marc Caro's more of a, he did the storyboards for this movie, and he's more of kind of like an artist as opposed to a filmmaker. Because I think he's directed like one other movie Marc Caro has. Whereas Jean-Pierre Jeunet went on, and I mean, because of this movie and City of Lost Children, which was after this movie, that's when he was approached to direct Alien Resurrection, which was a huge movie back then. I mean, that's a big,
yeah, absolutely,
big deal.
It's a franchise, yeah, absolutely,
big franchise. And so he did that, and then kind of after that petered out, he went back and regrouped, and he came out with Amelie in 2004 or something like that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful movie.
And that's the reason why. That's how I got to this movie. I watched Amelie, and I was like, okay, how can I see something else? Because it was such a new voice and kind of attitude towards filmmaking. I was like, are all French movies like this? And it's like, no, they're not. But this guy, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, does have this kind of a feel and an approach to filmmaking, which was fresh and new to me, especially back then. And I love this. In fact, I think I like this movie more than Amelie. But
wow.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to give a quick description of it. Post-apocalyptic surrealist black comedy about the landlord of an apartment building who occasionally prepares a delicacy for his odd tenants.
Excellent. I will say this. I've not yet criticized Netflix about anything. Do you know they put it on the description on the DVD, the envelope that it comes in? Mm-hmm. It tells you exactly what's going to happen.
Well, but the first 2 minutes.
But I didn't know that going into it. So,
yeah, okay.
I mean, you don't really know. You do,
you're
but
right, you're not really sure.
Really sure until the main character starts to happen to the main character. So it would have been nice to know.
Did you see the very beginning of the movie?
Yeah, but you don't know what that is. You don't know that. Oh yeah, I guess you do.
There's a guy in a trash can at the very beginning,
and then
true. The butcher has a huge cleaver. And
that's true. That's true. So, I was a little disappointed with that but it's not Netflix's fault. Still, but I should have read the description because normally I don't. I was surprised I did. I was like, why did I just read that? That's weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, where do you want to go with this?
Okay. I wanted to hear what you have to say about it because I could talk all day about this movie, but
okay. My first question is, why do other people consider this a boring film? Why did you pick this for this category?
Because I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted people to understand how cool a film this is.
That's the best reason ever. Because I was like, I understand.
It's a French film. That's basically...
Because people think
boring
French
equals French. I don't want to read subtitles.
Fair enough. Because I can understand why somebody would say Winter's Bone was boring. You know what I mean? Nothing really happens, so forth and so on.
But there's a whole subsection of people. I mean, it's not even a subsection. There's probably a good majority of people who are not gonna. Number one, not gonna watch a French movie. Number two, not gonna watch a movie with subtitles. Number three, not gonna watch a movie from 1991.
Okay, I don't ever want to really judge, but that's ridiculous. ridiculous. I mean, that's just cut you off from 1991. Oh my goodness. Do they know
It's too old.
Well, do they know what happened between 90 and 2000? There's some great art that happened musically. It's a superb year. So I don't know what their beef with something being old is, or in that decade. But when I got done with it, I thought, yep, this is right up Josh's alley, because it reminded me of a Terry Gilliam film.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really did.
It's very
I was not
Gilliam-esque.
bored on any level. I thought it was thrilling. I thought it was interesting. It's kind of Sweeney Toddish, obviously, in tone and attitude. And, you know, there's just something about there's a stock characters. We talk about that. There's the everyday guy, the every guy. And this one, I don't know if that guy's considered attractive. He's not. Okay.
I don't think so.
Right. Because I don't think he's unattractive, but he's not like George Clooney or Brad Pitt or somebody traditionally that we find.
He's not a leading man.
No. Okay. Yeah. That's the best way to put it. But you just fall in love with this guy. You like this guy. You see why the girl who's adorable is all get up too. I liked the levels of the house or the apartment complex, how different each person's apartment was, all the way down to the basement with the frogs and everything like that. I loved the exaggeration of everything. I loved the exaggeration of I called her the suicide queen.
It's
right?
Interrogator's wife. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved all of that. And I thought, you can kind of see where it's going to go. You can kind of see how it's going to, you know, everything's going to have a happy ending, if you will, hopefully. And you can kind of see where that's going, but it didn't matter because it's so interesting to look at. It's like a really great stage play where you could just look at that one wall of the set for hours and see tons of things. And then the next time you watch it, you go, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. It's not even, I guess maybe when they made the movie, maybe they thought the plot was a little, well, Sweeney Todd's been around for a long time, so maybe they didn't think it would be as shocking as maybe they thought it would be. It's not, that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was, it even has that kind of subplot that Terry Gilliam has with the people underground, like the mole men.
Yes.
Whatever they were called.
Troglodytes.
Yeah, the troglodytes, right. And I thought, when I saw them, I was like, this is a Josh movie if I've ever seen one. So overall, I'm completely happy I saw it. I'm glad that you chose it. I've heard about it, and it's one of those films that I've heard about, and it's just been in the background, and I'll get to that. No, I'll get to that. It's not that I had any aversion to it. It's just I never got to it. And so when you picked it, I was like, oh yeah, I wanted to see that movie. So overall, I completely enjoyed it. It's one of those films, unlike a few that we've seen recently, without mentioning any, that I can't wait to see this one again.
I know.
It doesn't even matter about the plot or the emotions or anything, although that's all there. And remember when we were talking last week about Gone Girl, and I was so glad when I realized we were going to talk about this film. Remember, all of the minor characters have subplots. They have backstories. They have history. He has a history, the lead guy. It's important. His history is important to the plot of the movie. Without him being a clown, they would not all be watching TV that night. All of that stuff wouldn't transpire. The end of the movie couldn't happen.
Well, in that movie, to me, it's formed in a way where, like you said, you've got all these different characters, but you feel like you're in good hands, and you also feel like these characters could be represented by blocks or something, and those blocks get the same amount of they get the same amount of screen time.
Absolutely.
In a lot of ways. And so, for example, like there's a character who's the mother of, like, it's a family with 2 kids and a husband and a wife, and then the wife's mother.
Right.
And you barely see her, but she plays a part. Like, she is a part of that of the movie. There's a scene that strictly involves her and the butcher, and you see her like just in passing a couple times, and then there's a scene that involves her. You see the frogman in passing, in the basement. There's a scene that involves him. In the water, and everybody gets their own, like you said, gets their own little segment, and you could probably even parse it out and say, like, they all get the same amount of time, the non, main characters.
But they all have a backstory that's, even if you don't hear it or see it in dialogue, or hear it in dialogue, or even see it, why the frogman is the reason why that he is. That's what I was trying to say about Gone Girl. All those supporting characters had none of that. So when it all came together, you weren't invested in it. For me, I wasn't invested in it. And like I said at the end of that show, that, give me a second time, let me see, maybe I'll change my mind. But this is exactly what I was talking about. Without all of those intricacies of all of those, even the kids, even without the kids. And you know exactly which kid is more brattier than the other kid, which is the smarter kid and which is the less, which is the follower, which is the kid who eats too much chocolate, just by the way they look. And it's all well thought out, and that adds to the story and to the. So at the end, when everything is coming to its conclusion, and they are literally on the roof, your heart is going because you've invested in all these people, because you know these things. By the time the Suicide Queen ends up with her plot line the way it ends up, you're like, oh well, I'm not sure. I thought that was going that way or this way or whatever. You know, are they going to live happily ever after? But you're invested in it because you know something. And not trying to compare it to Gone Girl, but that's what I was trying to say about what was lacking.
Missing,
yeah. It didn't pull it together for me. But this one, I cannot wait to see it again.
Yeah, it's great. And I just love, I mean, like a Gilliam movie, there's like a palpability to the setting. Like things look dirty.
Yep.
But they look real. Not dirty as in like somebody went in there and like threw some dirt on the floor, like real.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's the paint or whether it's the floor or whatever. I mean, it's just realistic. Whereas you've got these other more newer movies, I guess, either, and maybe it's the way that older movies were shot versus newer movies, or digital versus film. And maybe that's also something. That movie was shot on film, and so it has a different feel than, a Fincher movie, which is digital. I just found out today that movie was shot in 6K. The movie that we saw it in a movie theater that has a 4K screen, so 4,000 pixels, a little bit over 4,000 pixels left to right, to 2,000 pixels top to bottom, kind of about that much. And then 6K is like even more pixels. So it's just ultra high resolution, basically. It's crazy high resolution. So it's so, digitally, I mean, it is definitely got both feet in the digital world, whereas this movie was shot on film, and it does have that kind of and to me, I don't think that one is right and one is wrong.
No, not
I think
at all.
that they both have their merits, but yeah, I could just feel, down in the sewers, there's there is
Well, it's the difference between throwing dirt on the wall and saying this wall is dirty. He probably buried the walls in the ground for 6 months before in post or pre-production, and then unburied them, and then that's how you got their dirt. I don't know what he did, but that's what it feels like.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then there were a couple of scenes that basically just made me fall in love with this movie, and they were both musicals. Well, there's like 3 good musical scenes, but I mean, the biggest one to me was the actually, there's 2 scenes, but the biggest one is the squeaky bed scene.
Oh yeah,
and
smart.
That's just
well done.
It's just genius.
Yeah,
and
really well done.
I was doing some research on this movie and found out that was the American trailer for this movie. That whole scene. That's it. And at the very end, it just says delicatessen and has the swinging sign of a pig.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's the American trailer. That doesn't sound like how'd they get that approved? Good for them.
Well, I'm sure it didn't have a very big...
I don't mean like PG-13 or something, but that sounds very artistic and very thought out, that's how they wanted to say, come see this film. I think that's brilliant.
It's like, you got to see all these characters doing other stuff, because this scene is so great.
Yeah, you would think an American version would be like the clown or some kind of happy, or the boy girl thing or something like that. That's great. That makes me love it even more.
It's awesome. So and there's the other thing I was going to talk about was Darius Kanji was 2 things I want to talk about. Darius Kanji is number 1. He was the cinematographer. So he's worked on a bunch of movies. He actually was the cinematographer for Panic Room. Well, he's the cinematographer for 7.
Oh,
number 1 right there.
You could have that makes perfect sense, because if I hadn't said he buried the wall into the ground, I would have said it's like 7. And I know a buddy of mine worked on that film. And cool. Yeah. And they actually went into downtown Los Angeles to old warehouses and took out a bunch of, took out a bunch of swamp water. And that's where the guy with all of the
air fresheners.
Yes, that's where that's filmed. He said it stunk in there, and that's what Fincher wanted. And that's exactly, wow. It's an interesting parallel comparison considering we were just talking about what Gone Girl didn't have versus what this
versus
had. But
Seven.
there's a lot of similarities in these two stylistic films.
Well, and to me, Seven, when I think about Seven, I think about that the first murder, or the first death, I guess, where you have the overweight guy, and the whole scene is lit by flashlights. And that scene right there does a lot. I mean, it's what you don't see is what you do see. Those whole, I mean, that's a way to build tension, which, you know, it's hard to beat. So,
and what's interesting about Delicatessen on that level is that there's still a comedic tone. Like, you don't want to ever live in that building, in that none of those places.
No.
In Delicatessen, you kind of want to visit the frog guy. You might want to put on your galoshes and go down there and say, "Hey, what's going on?"
Have escargot with him.
Yeah. That's great. That's so great.
Darius Khondji also shot Midnight in Paris. He shot the new Woody Allen movie.
Interesting.
The Emma Stone one. I can't remember what that's called.
Oh yeah, the magical one. Where she has not magical, psychic powers.
Yeah. He also shot The Beach and Ninth Gate. So
yeah, that's one of those ones that I like, and a lot of people have a problem with The Beach. I like it. I like the way.
I gotta watch it again.
Yeah, I liked it.
But and then what I started off saying is that he was the beginning cinematographer on Panic Room. So you've got David Fincher, who's already got a relationship with Darius Khondji for Seven, brings him in on Panic Room, and then he gets fired.
Oh, that's the guy who got fired.
Yeah, and Conrad Hall, who's a famous cinematographer, his son was the assistant cinematographer, and he became the cinematographer.
Do we know why he got fired?
I don't know, but in the special that is on I have like the 3 DVD set, and they kind of
lent it to me. I watched it.
Yeah, and they kind of talked about that, I think, and I think there was some quote in there where the new cinematographer Conrad Hall said that he asked his dad about getting fired. Famous cinematographer said about getting fired. He said, "You know, you're not a cinematographer unless you've been fired at least once."
They say that about all of film. Every department in the film world. If you're an actor, you're not really an actor until you get fired, because it was Eric Stoltz in Back to the Future. Yeah. And luckily with nowadays technology, we get to see that stuff. You get to see it on the DVDs, you get to see it on YouTube and stuff like that. So I mean, you know, people get fired all the time. It's the way that it is. Well, he fired a couple people on Panic Room that became...
Oh, Fincher did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hayden Panettiere was the girl at first.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and he didn't fire Nicole Kidman. That didn't work out. But yeah, so that, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is possibly the most accessible thing, I think, or the thing that I think would get people in. If you were trepidatious about watching this movie, I would show you the title sequence, which to me is one of the best title sequences of any movie. And I don't know if you remember it.
Refresh my memory.
Okay, so it's you see the first scene is you see him you see the butcher kill a guy in a trash can. I mean, you don't see any blood or anything. You just definitely like, boom, that's the end of the opening scene. And then it goes into a single shot of the cameras kind of moving around things on a desk or on multiple desks.
Oh, yeah.
And for example, the Darius Khondji one was, you know, cinematographer. And then Darius Khondji's title card, or whatever you want to call it, was basically like a lens that's been broken.
Oh yes, I remember this.
You've got like the line producer. This is the person who handles all the budgets for the movie. Yeah. Was like
receipts or something, right? Yeah.
And then
that is brilliant.
You've got the this is amazing. So the editor, their credit was a picture that was ripped up and kind of put back together.
Oh yeah,
it's
that's
stuff like
great.
That where you're just like, this is perfect. The costume designer, it was a custom tag that was sewn in with the costume designer's name.
That's great.
I mean, it's stuff like that where you just sit there and you just marvel at that. At the number one, obviously the attention to detail. Number two, it's this whole like. It's this world that's obviously being built, and that right there is, you just sit there and you're just saying, these people care about this as much as I want to care about it.
Well, being specific like that creates an emotion. and it gets you into it, maybe not even on any kind of conscious level for, anybody who just goes to watch a movie, but it does seep in. And these specific things that they choose to do, life's about choices, Charlie. Choices make you who you are. It's a line from a play that was teaching me about the theme of a play. Mm-hmm. And it's true because that's also true in life too. So there is no such thing as too much attention to detail for film. You're right. That is an excellent opening sequence.
I'm sure it's on YouTube. You look it up, but that scene. Well, I mean, I call it a scene. I mean, I know it's
get
credits,
what you're saying,
but it is definitely a scene, and it gets you kind of prepared for this movie. It's that whole like you're in good hands.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I love this movie. Like I said, and like I said again, I think it's better than Amelie in a lot of ways. But
it's funny because I don't know if I could say a comparison like that, because Amelie was beautiful. It just works on every level. So I can see why you, who is a Gilliam fan, Terry Gilliam fan, mm-hmm. and your disposition about film, mm-hmm. I can see why this one probably appealed to you a little bit more. But I don't have. I love them both now. So I'm glad it's in my awareness of film now.
Mm-hmm. And so now we're going to talk about what could possibly be the most difficult movie to talk about.
Here we go.
It's our Blue movie, which is Diving Bell and the Butterfly. And
without a shadow of a doubt, it is the definition of why we have this category.
Yeah. It came out in 2007. It's a Julian Schnabel film. I'll give a quick description. The true story of Elle editor Jean-Dominique Bauby, who suffers a stroke and has to live with an almost totally paralyzed body. Only his left eye isn't paralyzed. So
I'm shaking my head.
Yeah, and this is the second French film actually today. So
I didn't put that together too. It's been recommended to me. Let me start with this. It's been recommended to me since 2007. Say the director's name again for me.
It's Julian Schnabel.
He won the Golden Globe, and he was a front runner for the Oscar, even though that's the only thing from the film that was nominated. People are like, wow, this has never happened before. Now, a film has won that the director was not nominated for. Argo.
Yep.
You down. Don't even get me started on that
Got
one.
It. Keep moving.
And then there is a film that won Best Picture, but didn't win anything else or nominated for anything else. Grand Hotel. So those kind of things happen, but it's never happened where a director has been nominated and only been the nomination. But that said, I can see why, after seeing the film, he was so acclaimed. He won the Golden Globe, like I said. He's so acclaimed. But I will say this, and it's on record now. My suspension of disbelief is extremely strong. So any kind of paraplegic film, I go very lightly into because I live it. I feel it. I know it sounds a little silly, but I don't like to live in that world. And then I'm watching this going, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to finally see this movie. This movie's been acclaimed. It's gotten all this, attention, all these positive reviews. The director, I've got to see this film. I even picked this one, said, why not this one? Got to get to it, right? And then you find out immediately that he's paraplegic and why and all that other stuff. And then it just takes that turn where I went, see, this is why I don't want to watch movies like this. With his eye. He's got two eyes, and then one goes bad, and they have to sew it shut. And it is the most severe thing that I have seen. I'm laughing out of nervousness, out of the tension from watching that. I was like, are you trying to tell me this guy is not going to be able to move anything in his body, and all he can do is see and hear, and now he can only see, and then the way they shoot that, from seeing it from his point of view, I almost turned it off and said, nope, we're picking another movie because I did not want to live in this movie. I'm glad I watched it, but it was every fear about this subject matter come true. So what I also thought was interesting was the way that he learns to communicate and the way that, so she's the nurse, they come up with the plan he can blink his eye once for yes, twice for no, or something like that.
That's on normal questions, yes, no questions. But then to translate actual words, they have they don't start with A, B, C, D, E, they start with kind of like, I guess, Wheel of Fortune style word letters that are used the most in words, and it's kind of a list of those letters, and then she rattles off the letters, and when she gets to a letter that he wants, he blinks.
And I thought, I can't make it through this movie. It's going to kill me because
you would be living that.
Yeah. And I thought, how frustrating. And then he writes a novel, and I thought, well, that's beautiful. But how frustrating it must, I can't even imagine the emotions that guy went through. And then I didn't realize it was a true story. And I almost came out of the film a little bit better going, okay, it's just a movie. And then I read out
cards at the end.
Yeah. And I was like, oh man, but I didn't tear up or get emotional because it was devastating. I found the devastation was beautiful to me, if that makes any kind of sense. I'll tell you this. I'm glad I saw it. I don't want to ever see it again for the paraplegic reasons. I have any of those movies, that movie with Javier Bardem, Under the Sea, or no, I can't remember the name of it.
Are you kidding me? Is it called The Sea
Inside? Yeah. Have you seen that film?
No, but it's right here.
It's a paraplegic film again, too.
Okay, it is a paraplegic. That's why. It was on IMDb.
Yeah.
He also was in a movie that Schnabel directed.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, and I have to look it up because I was looking at it earlier, and I got those two mixed up. I got The Sea Inside and Before Night Falls.
Oh, yeah.
Mixed up. So,
but it's a beautiful film. I'm glad I watched it. And I told you this a week or two ago, that I was watching it, and the person who originally recommended it to me said, oh, no, it has kind of a happy ending. No, it does not. Do you think this person lied to make me feel better? Because I had watched part of it and couldn't get back to it. Maybe that's some kind of denial now that I think about it. But then at the end, I'm like, you just see what happens to him, and that's it. That's horrible. This is one of those films that I would recommend if you really love films, but it's a hard watch. What do you think?
Well, I just watched it again last night. So
wow, you're in an awfully cheerful mood, dude.
Okay? Well, and so this is why, and I told you this last week, is that I told you I wanted to watch it again because there was an emotional, like you're saying that you lived that with what he was going through. The first time I watched it most recently, like 2 weeks ago, had none of that, and I watched it again, and I had none of that up until the very last scene, which I got. I mean, I guess I got a little. I don't cry at every movie or very many movies, but. Or even they don't necessarily impact me in that same way. But I was trying to figure out why it wasn't affecting me, or trying to see why it wasn't affecting me. And I think that, to me, first of all, the movie is beautiful.
Stunning.
It's amazing. And the way that I think he should have been nominated for an Academy Award, because he's able to do something. He does the first person point of view for the first 30 minutes, I think, or 40 minutes. I don't know. I mean, it's good. It's at least the first third of the movie.
And it's never boring, and you're never like, what's happening outside of that? You never think that.
It helps that every single woman in his life is beautiful.
Yeah, that's true.
Holy cow.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I know he's the editor of Elle, but still.
Yeah.
Even the speech, I mean, I think that the speech therapist lady was more beautiful than his ex-wife, and you don't really see his girlfriend at the time until the very end.
Yeah, that's horrible too.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's basically 30 minutes of looking at beautiful women, which is not a problem for me.
Paraplegic, but looking at beautiful women, it's a toss up.
But the big thing to me was, so since he has no emotion, I guess maybe I key off of that emotion or something. Once you do start seeing him, you do. It's a similar thing to movie that we just talked about, Elephant Man, where the first 30 minutes of the movie you don't see him. So you're not seeing the character. You're not seeing what the character looks like. And I mean, you could kind of equate it to, I guess, a stroke. I mean, that's kind of what they said he had. He basically had a stroke. So you could see somebody who had a paralyzed face. I've seen that before. But once you finally see him, his lip is down, paralyzed in a lower area, and he definitely looks unnatural. But once I saw that, I could kind of maybe, I don't know, understand it a little bit more. But I never really... You could more look at how he was affecting other people and how other people felt. The perfect scene, and I'm glad I watched this again, the perfect scene to point this out was the phone scene. It's a very small scene. A couple guys come in to install a phone, and they don't know how to interact with the main character. They don't even really know how to interact with the nurse. It's this weird, and we have to deal with that as humans. And that, I guess, was the most arresting thing to me is, the initial reaction is to kind of close off or to kind of like separate yourself from that, but he's still a human. And so that's the part where I was kind of, I guess maybe I was equating it to, losing somebody, losing a family member, and then that person is gone. I mean, they're gone and you're having to deal with the emotions. It was a similar thing. It felt like these people were dealing with it like that, especially his girlfriend at the time. She didn't want to come and see him.
Yeah, she didn't want to see him.
It's like, I don't want to remember you like this. I want to remember you like before your stroke situation happened, which is a cop-out, obviously.
Definition of selfish.
Exactly. But still, I mean, his situation was affecting her emotionally to the point where she was not wanting to confront that. And so that to me was more, I guess, more of what the movie was about for me. But, as far as he was concerned, he was determined. He was an artist.
No, it took him a while to realize that he was very defeatist in the beginning. He was defensive, and he didn't understand what was going on in the very beginning. He didn't understand why he couldn't communicate. So there was frustration there. And there's a point in time when he's like, I'm done. I can't do this. How do I tell them I want to end my life? How do I tell them that, that kind of stuff? Isn't there a time when he almost chokes and he kind of wishes that he had died? So it's not until, I think it's the nurse and her great performance that it gets him to, she's like, no, we're going to get this. We're going to do this. We're going to get, and then he surprises her and says, well, not surprises, but what do you want to do next? I want to write a novel. And she's like, okay, let's do it.
Sure.
By blinking your eye and guessing each letter. Can you imagine that? Amazing.
I think they did a good job kind of like giving you enough in the movie of understanding the process.
Yeah, and then by the time you got to the process, you were like, oh yeah, this would be just like learning how to type or learning how to...
She read basically like, a couple paragraphs, and he's like, well, 5 hours work.
Yeah.
And it's like 50 words or something,
Yeah, but
and
they got it done.
They did get it done. But so there was, and I felt like, especially at the beginning of the movie, the first person views, the way that he used like cloudiness on the lens, and I'm not really sure how they did that, if it was optical, like something over the lens, or I wouldn't think that in 2007 he probably would have done a lot of CG or something, probably wasn't that, but it was very creative. Even the scene where you're talking about them sewing up his eye, they actually did that in camera.
It looks
they didn't,
real
it
too.
does look real. I mean, it's obviously not real, but they figured out a way to do that in camera, and it didn't take you out of it. You talk about performances that take you out of a movie. It's not as much that for me as it is, physical thing, whether it's, bad green screen effects or whatever.
I know exactly what you mean.
That completely takes me out of the movie, and I kind of shut down. That never happened to me in this movie. And so to me, I guess maybe it's easier for me to watch the movie than it is for you.
No, can't do it. But, I see what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying, because you're saying you're reacting off of everybody's reaction to him. See, I'm seeing it through his eyes, like the point of view, and I'm wondering how I would be. What would I be doing? And then everything that he does completely makes sense. So you're like, that's exactly how I would react to that. Because at first you're like, why aren't they talking to him? Why are they not, blah, 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 blah. And don't do this to my eye. Don't do this. And you're like, why is he not being able to communicate to them? Yeah. You're kind of frustrated, like he's frustrated. See, so that was my side.
See, to me, I was always like, well, I mean, yes, you're not going to be able to communicate. Just get over it. Let's move on. Come on, let's go.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
But that's just the way that I came.
No, that's okay. Engineer, actor.
That's right.
That's the way it works. So where did you want to go next? Because I do have something that I found interesting above and beyond everything that we've been talking about.
Yeah, let's go.
It's a 90%. It's a 10%er. It's not a father-son relationship that's bad.
Okay.
No, and I was so excited about that.
Well, no, but wait, isn't it though? Because if you think about the Max von Sydow character, And was there a disconnect between them?
No, he was just getting to be a disgruntled older gentleman who couldn't get up the stairs anymore and had to have his son. He was embarrassed that his son had to come and shave him, but his son had no problem with shaving him. They have a little joking relationship. They had a good relationship.
I see what you're saying.
It was refreshing to see a good father-son relationship. And I will say this, Max von Sydow has been nominated twice for the Oscar. Once for Pele the Conqueror, which I have not seen as lead actor, and once as supporting actor for that movie Infinitely
Apt Pupil?
No,
he was good in that.
I don't even remember him in that.
Wasn't he in that?
No, that's
I'm getting mixed up with.
That's
Ian McKellen. You're right.
Yeah, that's Ian McKellen. Gandalf. It's Magneto. No, he was in that Tom Hanks, Sandra Bullock film with the little boy, Infinitely Loud, Incredibly Loud.
Okay, Extremely Loud, Incredibly Close.
Yeah, the film did not work for me, but he was nominated for that. How he was not nominated for this film blows my mind. That phone call that he makes, dude, I'm thinking about it right now, and it's killing me. I know this sounds strange, but I feel blessed when that emotion comes over me. And it was nice to see father-son love that wasn't about struggle, and then they realized they loved each other. They loved each other. And it was opposite of the girlfriend. He couldn't come see him because he couldn't get down the stairs. Now, he used that as a catalyst to not have to come see him because, it would have broken his heart. And he basically says that. But the son completely understands that. And the whole way Max von Sydow doesn't know how do I do this? He doesn't know how to make this phone call because his son's not going to be able to communicate back.
Yeah.
And the nurse is not going to. So the nurse says, is she a nurse? Yeah, I guess she's a nurse. Mm-hmm. She says, just talk to him. And he stumbles over it, and then he finally finds his words, and then he finally finds that moment that I think the reason why 90% of films are about father-son conflict, because for some reason, we cannot communicate with our dads like that. We just can't. And he finds every word he's ever wanted to say to his son. I was so touched, dude. I'm touched right now. It saved that movie for me. I was so happy that I had that emotional reaction because up to that point, I felt like I was in a cave and, like I said, I'm living through a paraplegic person's eyes. And it was, I'm like, I have to watch this because it's the podcast, but I really want to turn it off. But I just thought it was really nice. And it's going to be on the list of missed Oscar nominations when we ever do that show because it is really dead on.
And I think the catalyst for that whole scene is Max von Sydow's character had an opportunity. A lot of times, I could never. It's very difficult to lose a child. It's not how it's supposed to work.
Right.
That's not how it's supposed to work. So he had the ability to he had lost his child in the way that he had known his child. But he had the opportunity to say all of those things that he had never said. So he's in that pocket of being able to make it right with his son.
10%.
Whatever wasn't right.
Yeah.
But being able to make it right, which most people don't have capability.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was not necessarily making it right, but sometimes we can't find the words to communicate with the people that we really love. We can't say to our father, we love you, we're in love with you as you're my father and son, and that makes people feel uncomfortable. So to actually see it manifest itself in a film like that, I thought it was refreshing. I thought it was touching. And just like you said, he had that chance to communicate. And there's that moment where you're thinking, oh no, he's going to leave it open. And this is going to be 90%. Don't do it to me. And boom, he doesn't. So for that reason alone, I would recommend this film, but I would say very cautiously go into this movie because it is hard to watch. It is not an easy film to watch.
It helps that it's beautiful. Like
it absolutely is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's shot. I can see why sometimes I'll see these nominations and then I'll see the film and I'll go, I don't really get why everybody's celebrating. Even if I didn't know Oscar nominations, Golden Globe wins, all that stuff that I know somewhere stuck in my brain, wherever those things go. Even if I didn't know that, I would have said to myself, man, this director really needs to be paid attention to because this film is beautiful. The way he shoots the butterfly, it's not so obvious. The way he shoots the diving bell scenes, it's not obvious. It's done. It's a metaphor. It's a visual metaphor. But it's not thrown in your face. It's not over the top. You're not going, okay, I get it. He's developing and coming out of his shell like a butterfly. There's no cheeseball factor to it all. But you're absolutely right. Technically, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And a couple of interesting facts about that, I was reading about it, is that this is obviously based on a true story. And this Jean-Dominique Bauby, he was in that hospital that they shot in. There was a little, patio area that looks out over the ocean and stuff that they shot in was where he would go to, get outside and relax. When they went on the beach, that was the same beach that they went to. So in effect, they kind of replicated the places that he was at when he wrote the real book.
Interesting. See, I don't know if I like that or if it disturbs me a little bit. Like the ghosts.
You mean you feel like
I don't know
you
if
didn't want to do that?
Well, I would. I don't know. As an actor, or if I had the opportunity, you have to put yourself into that. But I don't know if that would enhance it or make it a little bit eerie. It's freaking me out just a little bit more knowing that now. No. Yeah, just a little bit, but that's okay. It's not hard pressed for me with this subject matter. So, yeah. But that's good for them. That's cool. I know this is a strange leap, but Rain Man was filmed almost in sequence, and they actually traveled to those parts of the country in that film. Cool. So I love when things like that happen. So it's a neat fact to know that they were actually filming where this guy's world developed.
And it was supposed to be an English language movie, but a couple of things. Oh, and Johnny Depp was supposed to play the main character, but they messed up. Nobody messed up, but there was a scheduling issue, I guess, with the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
So, but the guy who the movie's about is French, though?
Oh, yeah, he's French.
Oh, so I'm glad they did it the way that
and
they
exactly,
did.
And that's what they were saying, that
the overdub with the French accent would have been...
Yeah, well, no, it wouldn't have been... Oh, yeah, you're right.
With Johnny Depp.
It wouldn't have been overdubbed. It would have just been like Johnny Depp speaking...
Well, that's what I meant.
I said, the French accent.
Yeah, I said overdub, but you know what I'm... Yeah, the voiceover, I guess, with the French accent. It would have pulled me out of it. I thought it was good that... A lot of people don't like subtitle films. I can't really... understand that. They're like, why do I want to read if I want to go see a movie? Because it's a great way to watch a movie. You learn and you're using two different skills. I think it's a win-win. And sometimes when it's definitely a different process having to read and watch a film at the same time. You have to kind of learn how to do it. And some people just don't want to spend the time to do that. But actually having subtitles like that made it better because it took it slowed everything down, like his world. It slowed everything down. You had to read it. So you had to make an effort like he was making the effort, and all we had to do was read. I think it's a trade-off.
No, but at the same time, like I couldn't imagine watching a Michael Bay movie as with subtitles. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Could you imagine like being in France and watching a Michael Bay movie with French subtitles? There's too many cuts and too much stuff going on. That may be difficult.
Yeah, maybe so.
In a lot of ways, a lot of the these foreign movies that I've watched have a slower pace in general. I mean, one of them that I can think of that didn't was B-13. Did you see that movie?
No,
it's like
never
a parkour movie.
No.
Yeah, it was in French, but yeah, these guys were flying all over the place, and I mean, the dialogue isn't really the most
Crouching
important
Tiger,
thing.
Hidden Dragon's very fast paced, and that's
true.
subtitled originally. Now they dubbed it for TV, which that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
We're beyond that. So this definitely fits into the blue category. Here's why.
I agree, yeah.
Because like I said before, really quick, back to the ending. It's one of those films I often say you're not giving much away, and you're not giving much away if you tell the ending of the movie. But I didn't know that was going to happen, meaning it's sort of in reverse what happens. You sort of see why he's in the situation he's in. And of course, it's with his son, which makes the Max von Sydow thing even much more impacting when you think about it. But it definitely ends on a down note. It does not have a happy ending. It is the quintessential blue category that we're talking about today. So if you're in a good frame of mind and want to watch a great film, and you're in a good frame of mind because it will definitely, it's a dark world that they bring you to, but worth it because it is shot so beautifully. You're right about that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right. Well, that'll close us up for today. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do with our next Old New Boring Blue. But if anybody has any recommendations, you can email us. You can email Josh at actorandengineer.com or Paul at actorandengineer.com. You can go to our website, actorandengineer.com, facebook.com/actorandengineer. And then if you want to tweet at us, we're on Twitter at actorengineer. All right. We'll see you next week.
Until then.
Bye.